asset. You're holding a ticket to the back end of the new financial internet. But that also comes with a warning. This isn't a passive play. Being early means nothing if you're also asleep when the shift happens. You have to prepare now, because when the systems activate, there will be no notice, no press conference, no warning tweet, just a sudden, violent repricing. That's why, if you're serious about understanding what's really happening, beyond the noise, beyond the narratives, because we don't chase pumps, we study the foundations the next cycle will be built on. And if you're holding XRP, XLM, or HBAR, you're closer to that foundation than you think. But only if you're awake when it happens. XRP, XLM, HBAR, each solving a different piece of the same puzzle. Here's the biggest mistake most people make when talking about XRP, XLM, and HBAR. They think this is some kind of tribal war, like one of them has to win for the others to fail. Wrong. This isn't Bitcoin versus Ethereum. This isn't Solana versus Cardano. This is something completely different. XRP, XLM, and HBAR aren't competitors. They're collaborators, whether they know it or not. They were each designed for different functions in the coming global finance stack. They are the protocol primitives of what's coming next. Let me break this down for you, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. XRP is the liquidity layer, the bridge. It was built for one job: to move value across siloed financial systems with speed, precision, and finality. This is what Ripple built RippleNet and on-demand liquidity (ODL) for. To take the old SWIFT system, where transfers crawl over days, blocked by correspondent banks, and replace it with a real-time, settlement-grade system that doesn't require you to pre-fund a Nostro account. Ripple didn't reinvent the wheel. They removed the friction. And XRP is the grease in that machine. Not just fast, but purpose-built for bridging currencies, even in hostile or low-liquidity corridors. What SWIFT is to messaging, XRP is to value transfer, but instantaneous. Now that Ripple's expanding into prime brokerage and tokenized credit via Hidden Road, this function is leveling up. XRP is becoming the liquidity rail for a tokenized capital markets world. XLM is the delivery layer, the access point. Originally a fork of XRP's codebase, Stellar had a different vision: democratizing access to money. But here's the twist. Since the launch of Sorbonne smart contracts, Stellar has evolved into a programmable, asset-native chain that's laser-focused on real-world finance, particularly in emerging markets, cross-border aid, and compliant token issuance. This isn't DeFi for crypto brothers. This is real-world DeFi. From Palago Labs issuing trade finance loans in Latin America, to UNHCR delivering biometric-stamped aid payments on-chain to refugees, to MoneyGram integrating fiat ramps directly into Stellar wallets. XLM is now functioning as the interface layer between the institutional rails and real people. It delivers accessibility where the traditional financial system fails. It's not flashy. It's not hyped. But it's solving trillions of dollars worth of inefficiencies in global value flow. HBAR is the trust layer, the institutional backbone. Hedera is not a blockchain. It's a directed acyclic graph, DAG, which means it doesn't have miners. It doesn't have congested blocks. What it has is finality, governance, and speed, all wrapped in enterprise-grade architecture. And it's governed not by anonymous validators, but by a real council of multinational corporations: Google, IBM, Dell, Standard Bank, Shinhan Bank, Boeing, and even the UAE's sovereign entities. These aren't crypto VCs. These are real-world giants. Why are they here? Because Hedera's design makes it perfect for tokenizing real-world assets, from carbon credits to treasury bonds to retail CBDCs. Already, Hedera is being used in production by ServiceNow and Dell to verify SaaS automation workflows, Avery Dennison to track billions of items across supply chains, the Dubai International Financial Center to explore stablecoin and CBDC issuance under Sharia-compliant frameworks. HBAR isn't trying to be the people's chain. It's trying to be the enterprise-grade trust layer for governments, regulators, and Fortune 500s. Here's the bottom line. You've got XRP as the cross-chain liquidity mechanism. XLM as the frictionless access and delivery layer, and HBAR as the institutional-grade, compliance-first tokenization engine. Put them together, and you've got the financial internet stack. XRP equals like TCP, IP for money. XLM equals like SMTP for peer-to-peer payments. HBAR equals like HTTPS for secure, verified, institutional-grade asset flows. Just like the early internet needed multiple protocols to function, we're watching history repeat in the financial layer of the internet. So stop asking which token will win. That's a retail trap. The smart money isn't looking for winners. They're looking for the entire puzzle. Because here's what's coming: a multi-chain financial operating system where each of these tokens will play a mandatory role in different zones of value exchange. That's why BlackRock isn't betting on one coin. That's why central banks are testing different protocols simultaneously. That's why governments are allocating through infrastructures, not meme coins. This is chess, not checkers. If you're only betting on one protocol, you're playing half the game. If you're positioning across all three, XRP, XLM, and HBAR, you're building a portfolio for a tokenized world that already exists behind the curtains. But soon, those curtains are coming down. You want to be ready before that happens. Institutional adoption is no longer theoretical, it's operational. Forget the white papers. Forget the hype cycles. Forget the testnet announcements. We are past the theory phase. This isn't about what might happen. This is about what's already happening behind the curtain, quietly. While the retail crowd scrolls past it looking for the next 10x meme coin, the truth is, XRP, XLM, and HBAR aren't speculative assets anymore. They're operational infrastructure. And institutions? They're not asking permission. They're not waiting for your favorite influencer to go bullish. They're already building on these networks because the next financial system won't be built on vaporware. Let's start with XRP. Since Ripple's legal victory over the SEC in 2024, it's been like someone hit the gas pedal. Hidden road acquisition? That wasn't just a headline. It's a strategic move to absorb a working institutional credit and brokerage pipeline and plug it directly into Ripple's tech stack. We're talking prime brokerage services for hedge funds, built on top of Ripple's rails. Ripple Liquidity Hub is no longer theoretical, it's live. And now expanded to include fiat ramps, USDC, BTC, and yes, XRP as a liquidity option for businesses to move value between banks, countries, and assets instantly. Ripple's UAE corridor expansion? That's not potential. That's compliant, regulated international money movement flowing through XRP-backed rails in one of the fastest-growing financial hubs on Earth. And the kicker? In a recent tokenized fund prototype, BlackRock's architecture cited XRP-compatible infrastructure as part of the liquidity layer blueprint. Let that sink in. BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, and XRP is part of the conversation. Now let's talk Stellar XLM. This isn't 2018 anymore. Stellar is no longer just the remittance coin. In 2025, Stellar is running real-world finance infrastructure, especially in the global south. Sorobant smart contracts are now live on mainnet, and we're already seeing deployment. Not test labs, real pilot programs like Palago Labs, issuing tokenized debt instruments in Latin America. Not synthetic. Not DeFi Ponzi's. These are actual loans. Real repayment mechanisms. Regulatory frameworks baked into the logic. The UNHCR's biometric aid distribution system isn't a test. It's active in refugee camps right now. Aid flows from funders through Stellar rails into biometric secured wallets that individuals can cash out via MoneyGram on and off-ramps in over 180 countries. That's humanitarian finance, rebuilt. That's stablecoin-powered global aid functioning today. And the implications? Enormous. If Stellar can handle biometric aid for the UN, it can scale to handle central bank stablecoin distribution, trade finance flows, and payroll logistics for unbanked populations. This isn't just crypto utility. This is national-scale infrastructure rolling out before retail even notices. And now, Hedera, HBAR, the institutional backbone. While the average retail user couldn't even tell you what Hedera does, the world's most powerful institutions are quietly running mission-critical applications on top of it. The Dubai International Financial Center, DIFC, The UAE's Financial Regulation and Innovation Hub is building a stablecoin framework using Hedera's technology. Why? Because Hedera provides auditable, high-throughput tokenization infrastructure with governance baked in at the protocol level. The UK All-Party Parliamentary Group for Crypto has not only acknowledged Hedera, they're actively reviewing tokenized asset policy models based on Hedera's governance and design. Yes, policy, not speculation. Avery Dennison's supply chain tracking system, known as Atma.io, is live, tracking billions of products using Hedera Hashgraph. That's already moving value and data in production. In Asia, tokenized green bonds are already live on Hedera, issued by banks and regulated institutions, not on Ethereum, not on Solana, on Hedera. Even Dell Technologies and ServiceNow are integrating Hedera into enterprise IT automation and workflow verification. That's billion-dollar enterprise software validating internal operations on-chain. And here's the brutal truth. Retail hasn't even noticed. Why? Because Hedera doesn't make noise. It builds in silence. And by the time it makes headlines, the smart money will have already cornered the table. So let's spell it out. While you're waiting for Coinbase to relist something, while TikTok influencers are hyping frog coins and furry meme mascots, while normies ask if crypto is dead, institutions are quietly building the rails for global finance on XRP, XLM, and HBAR. And not one of these networks is waiting for retail permission to go live. They're already operational. By the time you see it trending on Twitter, the price will already be gone. By the time CNBC covers it, the liquidity will already be locked up. That's how this works. The real trap is not the market crashing. It's you're being lulled into boredom while the system rewires itself around you. So here's the question. When the next wave of global capital plugs into these ledgers, will you be scrambling to buy or already positioned? Because XRP, XLM, and HBAR aren't bets anymore. They're pipelines. And if you're still here, smash that subscribe button to be crypto smart. Because while the rest of the market watches Netflix, we're watching the infrastructure of global value go online. The real utility is finally activating, and that changes everything. Let's cut the fluff. For years, crypto was all sizzle and no stake. Promises, white papers, vaporware, and roadmap hype were enough to send tokens flying. But now, none of that moves the needle anymore, because we're in the post-narrative era. Utility is the narrative now, and most of the market still hasn't figured it out. Let me say it differently. The protocols that are actually solving trillion-dollar problems are finally going live, and 99% of retail hasn't noticed. Let's start with XRP. We're not talking about a hypothetical liquidity network anymore. We're not talking about pilot programs or Ripple keynotes. We're talking real on-chain volume. Since Ripple's partial victory against the SEC, XRP is no longer radioactive for institutions. It's finally legally safe to hold. And that one shift completely unlocked the next wave of real-world utility. Here's what we're seeing. ODL, now Ripple Payments, has hit record-breaking volumes in 2024 and into 2025. Not retail pumps, not exchanges. Institutional-grade corridors, including the UAE, Brazil, and parts of Asia. Ripple Liquidity Hub is now onboarding clients looking for programmatic, compliant access to deep liquidity, with XRP embedded as one of the key rails. Central banks and sovereign funds are now exploring tokenized FX flows where XRP serves as the intermediary liquidity layer. This isn't just bullish. It's a paradigm shift. The second XRP became legally viable again, the market started shifting behind the scenes. You didn't see it in price. You saw it in volume, in corridors, in infrastructure deals. Now let's talk XLM. If you still think Stellar is just a cheap cross-border payment network, you're playing 5 years behind. Because with the activation of Sorbonne smart contracts, Stellar has evolved. It's now a fully programmable asset layer, and it's already being used to power real-world DeFi in regions where traditional banking has failed. What does that look like? Palago Labs is issuing tokenized debt to businesses in Latin America, backed by enforcement logic embedded in Sorbonne contracts. The Stellar chain is being used to program aid logic into UNHCR distributions, biometric wallets, geofence transactions, spend controls. This is programmable finance in the field, not in a test lab. On and off ramps through MoneyGram now provide physical cash out options across 180 plus countries, with Stellar powering the rails and USDC as the vehicle. And here's the key: it's compliant. Unlike DeFi on Ethereum, which regulators are still trying to box in, Stellar's design aligns with compliance first institutions. It's not sexy, but it's working. And when you're powering aid programs, trade finance, and stable coin rails for NGOs, working beats speculative every time. Now HBAR. The retail crowd still has no idea what's happening here. But institutions, they do. And they're building like it's 1999. Here's what makes Hedera different. It isn't chasing hype. It's not trying to be the next Solana or Avalanche. It's built for trust-first, compliance-mandated systems. That's why Hedera doesn't have anonymous validators. It has a governing council with Google, IBM, LG, Dell, DBS Bank, and even the UAE's sovereign regulatory arms. Why is that important? Because governments, regulators, and financial institutions can't afford to partner with chains that might get rugged, jammed, or blacklisted. They need finality. They need auditability. They need governance. And that's exactly what HBAR delivers. And now utility is going live. Asia's first tokenized green bond, already issued on Hedera. Avery Dennison using Hedera to track billions of physical goods through supply chains, live. The Dubai Financial Center's stablecoin initiative, powered by Hedera's trust layer. Dell and ServiceNow deploying enterprise automation logic on Hedera, already integrated. This isn't coming. It's here. And here's the punchline. The market hasn't priced any of this in. Why? Because institutional accumulation never looks like a meme pump. It looks boring. It looks slow. It looks dead until it erupts violently. Remember Amazon Web Services, AWS, in 2005? No memes, no mainstream hype, just massive, silent infrastructure being built for companies until it quietly became the backbone of the modern internet. That's what XRP, XLM, and HBAR are doing right now. They're becoming the AWS of value transfer, the underlying pipes for everything that will move money, settle assets, tokenize property, and disperse aid in the digital economy. And just like AWS, they're being accumulated and scaled in stealth until the moment comes where everyone suddenly needs them. So if you're sitting around waiting for TikTok traders or YouTube influencers to validate your bags, you're already too late. Because by the time retail finally wakes up, the smart money will already be sitting on generational positions, and those entry points, gone. You don't wait for utility to trend. You get in while the market is still asleep, before utility becomes narrative, and before narrative drives exponential price discovery. And that moment is coming a lot faster than you think. Hit that subscribe button right now if you're holding XRP, XLM, or HBAR, because the next section is where we expose the final trigger event that could flip this entire market on its head. Regulatory clarity, stablecoin integrations, and the final trigger. Now comes the accelerant, regulatory clarity. Ripple's partial victory against the SEC in 2024 wasn't just a legal win. It was a green light for institutional capital. HBAR and XLM were already ahead in compliance-first narratives. But now, the floodgates are opening. In the US, Congress is warming up to crypto with bipartisan stablecoin frameworks and clearer definitions of what qualifies as a security. In the UAE, Singapore, and the UK, compliant stablecoin issuance is being fast-tracked. And guess what networks are being tapped for infrastructure? Hedera, Stellar, Ripple. Circle and MoneyGram are using Stellar rails for stablecoin off-ramps. The Bank of England is consulting with Ripple-affiliated consortia for potential wholesale CBDC deployment. We're entering a new phase where stablecoins, tokenized fiat, and central bank digital currencies will need interoperability, liquidity, and settlement finality, and XRP, XLM, and HBAR check all three boxes. The final trigger will come when G20 nations roll out production-level tokenized assets. When that happens, it won't be about hype, it will be about throughput. Who can move billions in tokenized assets frictionlessly across borders? Spoiler alert, you're already holding the answers. Prepare yourself or be left behind. This isn't just about charts or next month's CPI report. This is about global infrastructure being retooled in real time. The token economy isn't coming, it's already here. The question is, are you positioned for it? If you hold XRP, XLM, or HBAR, you're sitting on the protocols that could power a multi-trillion-dollar settlement system. But sitting isn't enough. You need to track adoption news, not influencers. Accumulate during boredom, not hype. Understand the long game utility, not just the price. We're entering a phase where value will flow to real networks, compliant, scalable, and adopted by real institutions. XRP, XLM, and HBAR are not lottery tickets, they're infrastructure bets. But the window to prepare is closing, quietly, steadily. And when it slams shut, those who didn't act won't get a second chance. If you've been watching the moves Ripple, Stellar, and Hedera are making, and you're ready to be on the right side of this transformation, subscribe to Be Crypto Smart right now. We don't chase hype. We track the smart money, decode the institutional moves, and keep you 3 steps ahead of the crowd. Hit that bell. Don't just hold XRP, XLM, and HBR blindly. Understand what's coming next so you're not caught flat-footed.